Hello, if people are already on. Oh, 9, 10 people, amazing. I'm just going to sort my... Hi, Marcus.
Hello. Can you hear me, mate?
Sorry, guys, if you can hear us, I'm just going to connect to my headphones. Hopefully you can hear us. I'm just going to open the chat screen. If somebody that is online could just say hello and say everything is okay and you can hear us okay, and then we'll get started. We'll give it a few minutes and we'll get going. Oh, thank you, Sophie. Brilliant. That's good to hear. Thank you, Victoria. Fantastic. That's great. Thank you, Rachel, as well. Just while we're waiting for some more guests to join us, we've got 70, I think, people booked on for this evening. I'm sure not everyone will be able to make it, but we'll give it a few more minutes just to let everybody have a chance to come and join us. Just thought we could have an initial chat over something that sort of cropped up today. I'm sure that all of you are talking about in terms of what school is going to look like when schools do return in some capacity on June the 1st. And especially from a PE standpoint, from our perspective, I know that schools have been advised to have groups of no more than 15. And from our point of view, we are advising the coaches that work for us to deliver activities such as athletics, rounders, cricket, activities that are easier to social distance and for children to have their own spaces, I guess, and allocate them room during that period. We've also spoken to a few schools about having a rotation. So smaller schools, it'll be easier that a class might be allocated some equipment for the 7 and a bit weeks until the summer holidays, and that's their equipment, and every class gets access to that. For bigger schools, obviously that would be more difficult, where equipment won't be won't have as much equipment to be able to share out with everybody. So what we've proposed in those schools is that the children are almost on like a rotation. So it's 2 or 3 weeks of athletics, another 2 or 3 classes. So 2 or 3 classes would do athletics for 2 or 3 weeks, possibly more classes depending on the size of the school. And then the other 2 or 3 classes or more would do rounders. Another set of classes would do cricket, or those types of activities for sort of early years and year 1, etc. And then if schools wanted them to access lots of different activities during those 7 weeks, then they can rotate around and have a 2 or 3 week block of each. The equipment can then be cleaned at the end of that 2 or 3 weeks, and it rotates around. What we've said to our coaches and the schools that we will be working with is at the end of every lesson with that sort of 15 children or less, that we would almost decontaminate, if you like, thoroughly wash hands, wipe down equipment, ready for the next group to come in and take part. I'd be interested to hear thoughts while we're waiting for other people. If you have any thoughts, whether you are going to have coaching companies in, whether you are going to do without coaching companies, whether you're going to be delivering PE as such, or whether it's just going to be outdoor and almost like a playtime, I suppose. I don't know if you want to add anything to that, Marcus, before we get started.
No, hi all. Just really interested to know people's thoughts in the coming weeks, really, with regard to delivery, how school's going to look. Obviously, personally, potentially see it as an opportunity because children will be outside and potentially active as well. So, the role we play and the role providers and PE teachers play will be really interesting in the coming weeks, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. It's an ever-changing environment, and I'm sure it will change again in the next 2 and a bit weeks. So it's we'll wait to hear. Okay, it's gone 8 o'clock, so we'll make a start. People can join us as and when they can. So I'm just going to share my screen if I can find the. Here we go. Okay, great. I haven't quite worked out how to access the chat during screen sharing. So I don't know if you can still see that, Marcus, the chat element. Maybe you can keep an eye on that. But
Yeah, I can.
we'll get started. And if there are any questions during any issues that you, even if it's something you don't agree with, you think, oh, that's not really practical, we can't do that in our school, we'd love to know why, and that's not a why in terms of we think it can, because we're very aware that every school is different needs, different children, different sizes, class sizes, playground sizes, etc., etc. So we're always learning, and we want to know and improve our practice so that we can do the best for the schools that we work in as well. So any comments or any ideas, anything that we haven't said tonight that you think would be a fantastic idea for everybody to know about, please let us know. Don't be afraid to drop some comments in the box. We'd love to hear from you and make it as interactive as possible. Like I said, I'll check the chat at the end, and any questions we'll try and answer towards the end, and hopefully Marcus can keep an eye on the chat during, and we can answer as we go as well. So one of the pressing things, I suppose, and when the guidance came out around 30 minutes per day, my initial thoughts when that came out were it's going to be a challenge, and I'm sure that's why we've had so many people book onto this webinar, is that it has been challenging for schools to hit that target or that requirement. So we thought we would give as many suggestions as we can, as many easy tips and as many quick wins that you can have as a school and implement straight away, or from September when everybody's back in, or earlier, as the case may be. So just a brief introduction to Marcus and myself. So I'm Ben Kirk. I was a former secondary school PE teacher before starting our coaching business, which we'll dive into in a second. So secondary school PE teacher, and then our coaching company started in 2013. It was called Key Stage Coaching. Then it's subsequently changed its name, and we're all under the Inspired brand now. And I've been working in the education sector for around 14 years. And Marcus, over to you.
Thanks, Ben. So yeah, Marcus Holmes. I mean, throughout 20 years, really, my role's always been to get people active, whether that's been from an FA perspective, working for the FA with regard to engagement, inclusion projects, and raising attendance levels at football clubs, through to working for the County Sports Partnership as a senior sports coach with them. And also, I spent a really happy time at the Somerset Rural Youth Project. Really, really interesting project, a Sport England funded post. And that was to do with getting inactive 13 to 19-year-olds active within their rural communities in Somerset. Really, really interesting role. It really did make and shape my kind of vision and my thought process now, really, with regard to that structured coaching delivery arm, and also that kind of inclusion and kind of self-exploring kind of viewpoint as well. So really, from my point of view, always been involved in kind of raising attendance levels and raising activity levels within kind of children and adults as well.
Amazing. And yeah, and then just briefly a bit about us and the company. So as I said, Key Stage Coaching started in 2013, and Inspired Schools, which was initially Inspired Playgrounds, that was our first product. That was launched in 2017, almost 3 years ago. It was May, actually. Yeah, May half term 2017. And we coach in around 28 schools. It might be a few more than that now. And Inspired Playgrounds is in 61 schools across the country, predominantly in Somerset, but we do have schools, and I know a few are in attendance this evening, one in Norfolk, Waylands Academy. We've got a few dotted around the south, Dorset, Devon, and Cornwall, one in Wales. So we're just expanding our reach, but just thought I'd give you some context as to who we are and what we do. And then this sort of came up in conversation recently, and I know AFP have touched on it around, can 30 minutes be averaged out across the week, i.e. up to 60-minute PE lessons could equate to 4 days worth of 30 minutes. I guess my view is a bit contrarian on this, in that I feel a bit uncomfortable, and I'll go into reasons why on the next slide. I'd be interested to know how you feel about this. I know it would be easier to hit that 30-minute target, but it does make me uncomfortable, and I'll go into a bit more detail on that in a second. But the reason it makes me uncomfortable is thinking about those less active children. So I'll jump straight to the middle bullet point there. So what the less active children do on non-PE days. And the main reason it makes me uncomfortable is those children, and I'm sure you can all imagine quite a few, depending on the size of the school, children that pop into your head straight away. And even from the schools that we work in, I can think of quite a number that the time they spend in schools is the only time they are going to get to be active during that day. And as we know, the target is 30 minutes in a school day, but 60 minutes in total. So if we don't get those children active in the school day, then that is kind of their only chance to be active. They get dropped at school in the car, they get picked up in the car, they go straight home into their house, they're on devices, they have a poor diet, etc., etc. So from my perspective, Marcus and I are very passionate about raising physical activity levels and trying to reduce childhood obesity. So it's a massive mission and vision that we have. And schools are crucial in that. And I know it's very difficult with time pressures that teachers face, but I do believe it's our responsibility to try and do all we can and try and give those children as many opportunities to be active during the school days as possible. And then I've listed some other problems here, and jump in, Marcus, if you want to add anything. I've just put PE and PA, so physical activity, is undervalued at the school, which is a bit of a common theme. PE tends to be one of the bottom rungs at the ladder in terms of importance, and we're obviously fighting PE's corner as much as we can. And that's a key issue, really. And to have that buy-in of the head teacher is huge. And also governors, etc., etc. But to build that kind of sporting ethos is a huge building block to establish. So that is a problem we quite often see. Teachers being uncomfortable delivering PE. Don't get me wrong, there are some amazing PE deliverers in schools, but equally, it's not everybody's cup of tea. It's something that they find really challenging. Being outdoors, it's a little bit chaotic. And therefore, PE lessons sometimes can be less active, not active enough. Climbing frames are out in gymnastics. You see lines of children waiting to take part in activities, or you've got matches going on, a rounders match, potentially in the summer, where children aren't doing a huge amount and they aren't active when they're in the field. So there are ways to make those lessons more active. A huge one is changing time before and at the end of the lessons. So is 2 hours PE actually 2 hours when that's taken into account? And we'll delve into that a bit more deeply later, and some ideas to solve that. I've already spoken about what less active children do. The active children aren't really an issue. They will get their physical activity even if they didn't do any activity in school. Invariably, they'll be tearing around at lunchtime, playing football, playing whatever, running around, playing chase. Those types of children like being active. They enjoy being active. And then invariably, they'll want to attend after school clubs. They might have a bit more support at home, so then they can attend clubs outside of school time. So that's not really the concern. And then I've just said there is 30 minutes enough? So can we somehow weave in additional opportunities for those children to be even more active during the school day? And it's only going to benefit them. It's going to help with behaviour. It's hopefully going to help with attendance. They might start enjoying those brain breaks, those learning breaks. I don't know if you want to add anything on any of those points, Mark.
Yeah, probably two things really. Obviously, kind of going back to the change in time during kind of the school day for PE lessons, it is a big bugbear of mine. And there is an argument for the younger children that kind of getting changed, taking clothes on and off is a life skill. But, you know, when that comes to the detriment of kind of PE time and activity time, something that we kind of can try and strive for, really. I mean, for me, many of the schools, and we'll go on to some of our solutions, but many of the schools that we work for now actually encourage and have a kind of a school policy whereby children that do take part in PE on that particular day come to school in PE cut, and head teachers, once they've incorporated this in school, just realise that they're getting double the amount of PE time. So kind of that's one point for me. And the other point is probably looking at some of the most active schools we've worked with. And for me, the common theme there is always there's an instigator. whether that's a head teacher, a PE coordinator, potentially a parent, or even an external coach that has a massive passion for getting those children active. So I think really for a case study, every single school that we work with that really champions activity, and the children are doing lots of extracurricular clubs, and they're very active during the school day. There's always some type of instigator, or so to speak, a firework within their school community. And it's the schools that may not have that, that I think we can kind of offer some ideas around, maybe engaging sort of some of the senior children in the school that have a huge passion for activity and sport, that can kind of champion that area of the curriculum as well. Thanks, Ben.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, solutions. So on the next slide, we'll start to go into more specifics, but what we're going to look to do is to break the school day down. I thought it would make more sense to go through your typical school day and opportunities that you hopefully will be able to integrate straight away or as soon as possible into the school day and start raising those physical activity levels. So we'll go straight into it, and we'll dive into the before school options. So breakfast clubs, and Marcus, I don't know if you want to touch upon, Marcus has been heavily involved with a breakfast club at one of the schools we work in.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for us, we worked, or myself personally, worked with several primaries that wanted to do something before school, and identified that period before school as an opportunity to increase activity levels, but potentially get those children that really need it to be active even before the school day starts. So my kind of big thing really was to come away from the kind of terminology of a breakfast club, and we actually kind of champion some early active clubs. So even the title of the club, it's early and it's active. So, from a parent perspective, they knew the deal. The children were expected to be active. It was a sports club. So the sports club ran from 8:10 to 8:40, and actually feedback from teachers was that it was a fantastic way of settling children before the morning started. And really interestingly, it was some of those children that probably needed it the most were the really regular attendees. We ran the club Tuesday, Wednesday and Thursday mornings, and just those 25 minutes or half an hour activity time before school really made an impact into the amount of activity those children were doing. Some children were coming on several days, not just one. And just to kind of break that down, if the child's come in to two of those clubs before school, that's probably an hour of physical activity that child's doing even before PE lessons, lunchtime clubs, after school clubs. So it's been really, really popular. In one of the schools, I think, of around 200 children, we've had up to 40 children in the early morning sports club, the early active club. And so as a correlation, it's phenomenal really that those children want to come in, they want to do something active, and they're keen to be active. But I think from our point of view, it was always marketed as an early active club, not a breakfast club, not a kind of a babysitting service, but it was an active club. It was a sports club, and it was led as a sports activity as well.
Yeah, that's a great point, and the branding of it is huge. Moving on to kind of like the old style wake and shake that used to exist, like when Marcus and I used to work for the local authority in Somerset, we used to deliver wake and shake to sort of start the day, and it's faded away, I think, for many reasons, but that type of activity can be an amazing way to sort of invigorate the children, like Marcus said, settle the children before the day starts. At St Mary's School in Bridgewater, actually my daughter's school, they run in the spring and summer term, they run a parent and child workout every Friday morning, and I started that initiative off and initially did a session for just girls and jumped on the This Girl Can, I think it was called, by Sky Sports, trying to get girls involved with sport. And we had, the first time I ran it, 60 girls that turned up, and that was just Key Stage 2 that it was offered to, plus the parents who were due to take part. So it became, it was hard to run at that time with that volume of children. Obviously it was the first one, so it has faded away numbers wise, but that's a really nice way to start engaging the community, get parents involved, and for them to be role models for the children that that take part as well. And the more sporty, more active, more involved parents can actually be sort of leaders in that. And if you have sports leaders at the school, I've written there, get sports leaders involved. They love being involved with that type of thing. They can help set up if you want to set up specific games and activities, but them in combination with their parent potentially to lead on that, so that, again, it doesn't impact on teacher time, is a really nice, quick and easy win as well. I wouldn't suggest to try and run it year round, but you could run it for specific half terms and say that it's going to run for a block of 7 weeks, not necessarily this summer half term, but maybe it started from September, that from September we're going to do 7 weeks or whatever it is until the October half term. This person's going to be leading it. We're looking for leaders as well, and they're going to be there and run it. And if you can get 10 to 20 children there, then fantastic. It's 10 to 20 children that are going to be more active. Yeah, and I mentioned there about community and the feeling that we've got when we've run these community sessions with parents involved. I actually visited a school in Banbury quite a few years ago, and they had elderly pensioners that would come in at lunchtimes, and they would engage in the activities with the children. And I was just a visitor at the school and was trying to find out what they did and what they had in place. And it was amazing, the engagement of the pensioners with the children. They were running games. They were like so enthusiastic. The children loved it. And for some children at school, they don't necessarily have great role models at home. So it could be something that would work on many levels. So getting the community involved with parent-child workouts, or possibly that I think they called it like a pensioner program or something like that worked really well for them. And finally, for me, before I hand over to Marcus on one of the schools that we work in again, is just doing like active register. I think you've done active registers at one of your schools, Marcus, is that right? That you've been involved with?
Activity registers?
Yeah, so no.
Yeah,
so it might be one of our other coaches. So they're taking the register and the children are actually up doing physical activity.
So just to touch on that, really, again, 5 minutes a day, really, but kind of came up with a program, trialed it in one school, still goes really well to this day. So their mantra as a school was always going to be, can we get children completely active for 5 minutes a day, incorporating it in the school day? So for example, we selected 5 exercises or activities, some really simple, straightforward activities. So some star jumps, running on the spot, some lunges, and all of the teachers took it on board that during the morning register, they would do 3 1-minute activities. So, potentially some star jumps, some squats and some running on the spot. And during the afternoon register, they would do 2 times 1 minute of high intensity activities. So as the register is being called, these guys are, and actually every single class kind of selected a sports leader to kind of lead that as well, whilst the teacher would be taking a register. So 5 minutes of high intensity activity, no changing involved, no impact on school time and timetables and pressures of the timetable as well. But, just with that alone, you're talking kind of 25 minutes of HIIT activities during the week. And, children love it. And again, first thing, children come in, they take their bags off, they get ready. It's a great icebreaker and also settles the children down before they're learning during the morning. And then generally in the afternoon, children would come in as the register's going in, they take part in that activity, 2 minutes, and then they'd be ready to learn again. So, 5 simple minutes of activity, really easy to implement, but quite a big effect.
Yeah, and just to add to that, there's so many resources out there that you can use on YouTube or I've written 25 minutes each day there. So I meant per week that Marcus was going to explain the case study. But yeah, loads of resources out there on YouTube. We've got our Inspired 5, which is sort of the next level on, I suppose, from YouTube, where we've got HIIT workouts, sports stories, aerobics, yoga and dance, and they're really easy to weave into the school day, but it doesn't have to be Inspired 5. As I said, there's lots of workouts on there, even if it was 5 minutes of a Joe Wicks video, for instance, or something like that. And also, I know schools are different in terms of how they allow children into the school, so it's not necessarily a free-for-all that children just come straight into the classroom when they arrive. But could it be? Could it be that when children do get to school, they can come into the classroom, put their bags away, hang their coats up, come and sit behind their desk, and there's a video playing, and that might be a nice way to just get them involved with some physical activity before the day starts. It doesn't have to be structured. It could just be something on the screen that they can or don't have to join in. It could just be something, a dance video that they might just join in with because it's on the screen before you then engage them with the day. So there's a few examples there before school, and hopefully that's giving you some ideas that you can implement. During classroom lessons, there's a lot of text there. I probably shouldn't have written so much. But the main theme of this is learning and brain breaks, which I'm sure you're all familiar with. And what we encourage all of our schools, both on the coaching side and our Inspired Playgrounds, Inspired Schools to do, is to integrate those learning brain breaks into lessons. And again, it doesn't necessarily need to be planned. It doesn't need to be at this time we're going to do a brain break. You know your class better than anybody, and you know when they might be struggling with their learning. They might be flagging a little bit in an afternoon slot. Year sixes in the lead up to SATs, it's an intense period of time. There's no right or wrong way or right time to use a brain break. Just use them and utilize them as much as possible. The data and the stats are out there that activity levels will stimulate the endorphins, and then they can re-engage better with their learning. In terms of a case study, Marcus and I actually hosted some interviews at a school of ours that is local to us. And we're really fortunate that we've got a great relationship with this school, and the year 6 teacher let us use his class. And it wasn't a huge amount of time before SATs, but he let us have his class for 30 minutes for one of our candidates to deliver a lesson to. And they came in and did a maths lesson off the back of doing a PE lesson. And I'm not just saying this, but he said it was the best maths lesson, the most productive maths lesson that he had delivered to that group. And we sort of chatted afterwards, and it's no coincidence that it was because of the physical activity before that everybody's brains were ready to learn. Endorphins were going around, that they were kind of in the right frame of mind to learn. So those brain breaks don't need to be at the start. It could be that you notice a little bit of a fade, right? Everybody out of your seats. We're going to either go outside just for a walk, or we're just going to do 5 minutes of some kind of physical activity. Again, using YouTube, you can use Inspired 5, the schools that have that. And again, there are lots of online resources out there. Yeah, I don't know if you want to add anything to that, Marcus, at this moment in time.
No, not really. Just the fact that the importance of those brain breaks, throughout the year, wherever it is, when the weather's nice, get the children out. And it can be a really, really short session that takes no longer than sort of 5 minutes or so. If it is one of our Inspired Playground schools, obviously it's a ready-made resource for a teacher to go on. But there are so many resources out there, during bad weather. It may just be something that you do in the classroom. Just get the children up, get them active, and they will settle and kind of get back into what they were doing really, really quickly as well.
Yeah, and again, to add to that, it's just triggered something off in my head that it was a real bugbear of mine that you'd be delivering a PE lesson and 5 children would suddenly disappear to go and do an English intervention, and thinking, where have they gone? And you have to rebalance the teams or whatever you've got going on. So you could almost see it as that again, the children in your class really well. You know the ones that will be able to sit there and engage. It doesn't necessarily need to be every child in the class. If you have TA support, it could be that the children that would really, really benefit, the children that struggle to sit down for 45 minutes, get them out halfway through, take them for a walk, get them outside, do some running, or as Marcus said, if an Inspired Playground is at that school, it's a ready-made resource, get out there, do some physical activity, and those children can be brought back in and reintegrated back into the classroom, rather than struggling with their behaviour in the class and hoping and constantly prodding and trying to coerce some work out of them. That might be the perfect solution, that actually we know we're going to get 15 minutes out of this group of 5 children, but then after 15 minutes we're going to take them out into the hall, into the playground, depending on the weather or depending on what activities you've got, get them active, bring them back into the classroom. It always amazes me that it's almost commonplace, right? In SATs week, that the children will do an exam, then they'll come outside, they'll let off some steam on the playground, and then they'll get ready for maybe the next exam or some revision for the following day. So if it works in SATs week, perhaps it can work during the rest of the year. And then just finally, on the last point there, you could potentially repeat the morning routine. So children come in from lunchtime. Yes, some of them would have been really active and they're shattered, so they can join in at a lower level, but there might be some children that have been sort of sedentary at lunchtime. So you could do a hit or a dance video on YouTube, whatever it might be. But again, that might get them too high. It might take them over the edge possibly. But then you could bring them back down with a bit of mindfulness potentially after that. And a Headspace that I only found out this year is free to teachers, and you can use that in the classroom, and it's a brilliant resource. I use it myself, and it's a great way. It's guided meditation. The children can follow the sound, the video that you can put on the board, and it just then will bring them back down from lunch. They might have had an argument with a friend. They're not in the best frame of mind to learn. So Headspace is a really, really good tool, and I highly recommend. I couldn't recommend it enough. And a lot of our schools are now using that as not necessarily a behaviour strategy, but just a way to help children engage in their learning. So that's classroom lessons. PE lessons, and we won't go into a huge amount of detail on this. Marcus has touched upon the kit scenario about children arriving to school potentially in their PE kits, which would save a huge amount of time. As we know, early years, year one, do take a fair amount of time to get changed, and it can significantly impact. If you take 10 minutes off the start and at the end, and that's being generous, then you're talking about a 40-minute PE lesson, and by the time they walk out, by the time they walk back in, maybe 30 minutes. When I did my PGC, I did my dissertation on my talk time when I was teaching, and it was scary, the amount of time that I would have kids sat down listening to me. And looking back now, you think all they want to do is play whatever sport we were doing, badminton in the hall, but I'm teaching them how to do an overhead clear for 5 minutes. I'm talking through the technique. So the point here, I guess, is can they come to school in their kits, but also can we maximize that time that they are in that PE lesson? Yes, we want them to learn. It's a PE lesson. They need to learn how to move and how to play the sport, but they have to be active. Our coaches, when they're teaching less active lessons, so gymnastics as an example, athletics, maybe a throwing lesson, javelin or something, we encourage them now. In fact, we tell them to add in some high intensity breaks. So gymnastics is a little bit less active. So add in a 5-minute hit session and make it as fun as possible. Same with athletics. So we're just getting that heart rate up and we're raising physical activity. And having more active lessons. As I said, I videoed myself in my dissertation, and yeah, I'm sure that if coaches did the same, it would be quite startling the amount of time that they spend talking. And I think, so poor practice in PE. So coaching companies, I mean, we pride ourselves on the delivery here in Somerset, and our coaches we've got a really good staff team here, but there's a lot of poor practice out there where, as I said, maybe children are sat down for large periods of time. Behaviour management might not be great. They are playing matches with large groups of children. It's not differentiated. Children aren't accessing the lessons as they should be. So just be mindful. Obviously, it's hard. I know it's hard to monitor an external company. Time is of the essence. I'm very aware of that. But just make sure that they have the right procedures in place and they're observing their staff, and you're getting feedback from when they're observing staff to make sure that the quality is assured. As I say there, it's a bit of a minefield, and we're going to do a separate webinar to help schools make sure that they have the best possible coaching in place at their schools. Again, Marcus, do you want to add anything to that?
Only really raising the question for me, I always revert back to the question that is every single child out of breath at any given moment during a PE lesson, whether it's gym, whether it's invasion games, whether it's outdoor ed. Does every single child within that lesson always get out of breath, even for a short space of time? And I think from our perspective, that's kind of our mantra really, that do children get out of breath? because if they don't, then how physically active are they within that lesson? Some of the children will have higher fitness levels, but there's little things that you can drop into lessons, even kind of your gymnastics, that can give that children that kind of activity boost and that high intensity work. And really, for me, if a child doesn't get out of breath in a PE lesson, I think we're struggling. I think it's one of those givens that every single child should have access to, and we should try and kind of make sure that happens, really. Thanks, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, I think this is the final slide on solution suggestions. So extracurricular, and again, it's relatively self-explanatory, I suppose. We've already spoken about breakfast clubs or early active clubs, as Marcus rightly pointed out. Lunchtime clubs are perfect. So you've already got that captive audience that children are in school. They might not have the support to come to an early active club or an after school club. So lunchtime clubs are perfect. And again, utilize those sports leaders. You don't want to be out on the playground every day running sessions as a teacher. We know, and rightly so. You need a break. You need lunch times to sort of find yourself again before the afternoon lessons. And I know invariably lunchtimes are taken up by marking or children coming in to say that X, Y, Z's happen on the playground. So yeah, I don't think it's right that you as teachers can lead lunchtime sessions. Great if you want to do one for one day a week. I'm not saying don't do it, but not every day of the week. Otherwise, you're going to burn yourself out. So utilize who you have at the school and give those leaders a chance, because the leaders that we work with, in fact, most of them are incredible. And it's not always the leaders that you expect to be the best leaders that do make the best leaders. It might be a child that struggles with behaviour who will make a fantastic leader because they've got really high levels of empathy towards other children. I'm going off piste a little bit with regard to sports leaders, but those lunchtime clubs are perfect. As I said, you've got the children there, and run lunchtime clubs, maybe not every lunchtime, but you can target specific children who you know are less active. And then after school clubs, and I'm just going to go straight into a case study here, but thinking about those less active children, they might not want to exercise or play in the football club with every other child. They might lack in confidence. They might not be the best netball player. They might not have great coordination, so they shy away from it because they fear that they not necessarily be ridiculed, but don't feel good enough to be a part of that. So run different types of clubs, have a really wide-ranging extracurricular program. And then just finally for me on this, an adventure club that I ran probably 4 or 5 years ago now, when I was still delivering in St Joseph's School, Catholic school in Bridgewater where I live. And we ran, we called it an adventure club. It was targeting less active children, of which there were quite a few at the school. And it's a lovely story in that we ran it, and I think we had about 16 children that attended, and the numbers gradually faded. But it was a positive, because those children that stopped attending were actually finding that I really enjoy PE, and it comes back to having good quality provision in place. Because I'm a firm believer in that every child can enjoy PE and physical activity. I think it's a learned behaviour that they stop enjoying running around, playing in the mud, being scared of the cold or the wind or the rain. That kids love being outside. So it was almost finding that again, reinvigorating them and saying that, yeah, we just did some fun activities and found activities that they really enjoyed, built their confidence up, and then they started going to other clubs that the school enjoyed. So the numbers dropped off, and then we would target another group of children to do the same thing, to try and get them to engage in other clubs. So Adventure Club, they termed it that so that it was a bit disguised to parents, so that it wasn't, I guess, as obvious of what the club is. But think of your own terms. But that was just a lovely case study. If you want to add anything to extracurricular, Marcus.
Yeah, just that if you do have external coaching companies in, try and be creative with them as well. And coaches will often be very creative, but if you give them some guidance, a prime example of that is several years back. It's a little bit off the hoof really, but several years back when bottle flipping was a craze. a head teacher kind of asked me, could we do something around it? So we actually had an after-school bottle flipping club, all to do. And to be honest, it was fantastic. Some of the children that signed up for it, it was oversubscribed, and our kind of take on it was that it was an active club, because yes, the children were doing relays in teams and trying to bottle flip and bottle flip in pairs, but the different spin on it made it really, really attractive to those children that might not maybe sign up to a football club or a tag rugby club. But it was a brilliant club and really oversubscribed as well. So I think just being creative with the offer, and there is an element of activity that we can put into many different everyday things, I think. So kind of an example for you there.
Yeah, and just going to answer, so someone just asked, what type of activities did you do at the Adventure Club? I didn't do any bottle flipping at the Adventure Club, but it's a great point that it be as innovative as you can be with it. We did things like, it was in the summer term, so we did like Danish long ball, I don't know if you know that game, which is kind of like a combination between cricket and rounders, but dodgeball. So basically you'd have an area at one end, like a batter's box, if you like, and another box at the far end, and you hit the ball, and they would try and run to the other box to score a point and run back to score 2 points. But the beauty was that what we did was, the ball was a foam tennis ball, so it was soft. We weren't throwing rounders balls at each other. But we would then have cones that were dotted around with other foam tennis balls on. So as soon as that ball was hit, anybody could then go and grab a ball. So they're all active and they're all throwing the ball. So I think the point to take away is something that gets everybody active and that they can all engage with. Danish long ball is really easy in terms of the skill set, because you're hitting a ball. It can be off of a tee, it could be using a tennis racket, it could be using a big spongy ball so that everybody can hit it. You could even do it by kicking the ball. So that was one thing that we did. We did athletics, but again, we differentiated it. So we would have different races going on, and I would try my best so that children were racing against other children, or they would form a team and they would come up with tactics to beat the other teams, and they would accumulate points from throwing, from running, from loads of different activities. We would try and do mainstream sports, but make them accessible. So again, if we were doing football, for instance, break it down so that we would have like 5 games going on, 2v2s, 3v3s, children playing against children of similar ability. And I think that's key. Yes, it was an adventure club with children that were similar ability to themselves, but equally we did have a wide range of age groups. So then we still need to differentiate it within the sessions as well. I hope that answers your question. Yeah, I hope that answers your question. Please comment if it hasn't, and we can come up with some more ideas. Okay, how do I get out of this? Can't click on. I'm stuck now. Can you see that question and answer page, Marcus?
I can see the question and answer page, yeah. If you just press the button.
I can't get rid of it. There we go. Go away.
You tell us a joke while waiting.
Yeah, go on, I've got any jokes. I can't even go on to the next slide. Oh, here we go. Go away. Right. Sorry about that. So the solutions that we've provided so far hopefully will help you, and hopefully you can implement straight away. Don't need any equipment, don't need any resources, but I just thought we'd finish off by telling you a bit more about our specific products and what we do. So Inspired 5, as we've mentioned, which is our video resource. So if I click on this, hopefully it will take us to the app, which it is. Okay, can you all see that? Hopefully. So this is our web application. So Inspired 5 now sits on here. This is my login. So when I go into it, I haven't got a class that's registered to my name, but as you can see, Inspired 5 is on here. And if I click into the videos, what I can do is select any of the videos that are on here. So we've got HIIT workouts, we've got sports stories, we've got yoga, we've got dance. And like I said, if I was a class teacher and I clicked on one of these videos, it would automatically add 5 minutes time to my classes total. And also on this register as well, on this app. So leaders, as I mentioned earlier, they're a huge part of the Inspired Playgrounds project. And we've got our schools on here, and I won't click on any schools because it'll bring up names, but the leaders record the active minutes for the schools at break and lunchtime. So if an Inspired Playground session is being run, the web application is a part of that. And schools then get a really nice feel for how much physical activity is being done during the school day. And what we are looking for September is 20 schools to test this out for next year. So it's just all gone onto the web application. So we're offering it for £99 for the first 20 schools that join us for a September start. Yes.
Can I, we've got a question. Can we see a sports story? Is it possible to see a sports story on the app?
Yes.
Quick question. Ollie's asked if he could see a sports story.
Yeah, of course, Ollie. Sorry, I didn't see that. Ollie, you're testing me now. You're testing my technical skills here. Yep, sports stories. So I will show you my favorite one, actually, Sports Day. So underneath here, if I had a class allocated to my name, to my login, I would have, do you want to record this session? And as soon as you click play, it then records that 5 minutes. I don't know if you can hear that sound. Can you hear that sound, anybody?
No.
Yes.
Thanks, Ben.
You hear that now? Any good now?
No. Maybe you can send Ollie the link so he's got access to that.
Apologies, Ollie, but the sound is on there, I promise. But if you go onto our website, there are some sample videos on there. That one's not on there, that's Sports Stories one, but there is a sports story one on there. I think it's a tennis one that's on our website, so inspiredschools.co.uk, and then on there, our solutions, Inspired 5, and you get some sample videos that are on there. Any other questions?
Kyle Walker said it's because your AirPods are in, Ben.
Oh, got you. Is it miming sport? Yes, it is. Yeah, so it's that sports day one. They go through javelin, shot put, different activities, and basically the children do it chairs under, and they do it on the spot right there and then. And we add to that. We're going to add to that every half term, depending on demand. Yeah, so that's that. If I take the AirPods out, I'm going to show another video in a second. So that's Inspired Playground. Sorry, that's Inspired 5. Inspired Playgrounds, just so you just see this in action. So this is our product that we started with. So if I take these out, maybe it'll work, we'll see.
before
Hear
lunchtime.
that?
Really, really busy. The best thing of all, we've got our sports leaders out. Working with children, all of different ages, engaging them in different activities. We've got hand-eye coordination activities, we've got some quick fit activities, some lightning ladders, and as you can see, fantastic for firstly the leaders, they're developing confidence and self-esteem.
So, oops. So that's our inspired playgrounds, and that just shows an active playground at one of our schools. A bit chaotic, and you've got leaders running sessions. Actually, not wet play, but they weren't out on the field. So, as you can see, quite a lot of children in a confined space. So that's our inspired playgrounds, led by sports leaders. They run the sessions, and as I said, they record the minutes as well. So schools get a real feel for who's active and who's not, and you can put target sessions on as well. So if you have that target group of children in Key Stage 1 or Key Stage 2, you can put specific sessions on them for break and lunch times, and then they can quantify. You can quantify the minutes that they do, the additional minutes that they do during the week. And high quality coaching provision, as I said, will help. I know it doesn't seem like it would, but if you're getting the most out of those PE lessons, those children are going to be more active. And finally, sports leaders. So I'm sure most schools have sports leaders. If you don't, feel free. Again, on our website, we have a free sports leader sort of introduction. Oops. Not sure what that is. Okay. Yeah, so a sport leader course. There's a video e-learning course to start creating sports leaders at your school. That's free, so you can sign up for that and get started with training up your sports leaders if you haven't got them already. Even if you have, it might give you some ideas on how to get the most out of them. And then just the ultimate goal, I suppose. We put a question on the Facebook group recently. What's the most important outcome at the end of primary school in terms of PE? And most, as you can see, most of the responses were the same or similar in terms of that lifelong participation, love of sport, confidence, enjoyment, positive perception of PE, health. So everything that was stated there kind of reinforces what we believe in and our vision. And ultimately, that is what we believe in and what we hope all of our primary schools can achieve, that more children engage in PE, and it is about that lifelong participation. If they love sport, if it's fun, if it's enjoyable for everybody, they're more likely to pursue that when it's a choice and not mandatory. And then the final point about us, if you want to find out more about what we do, inspiredschools.co.uk, you can book a call through the website, and we're happy to discuss anything that we've talked about this evening and go into more detail. Or if you want more information about any of our products, then please let us know. Next week's topic is going to be a tricky one. Something, as we said at the start, we've started to think about already, but social distancing in PE for when schools return. So we're going to get our heads together, speak to our coaches, speak to our schools, and come up with as many practical tips on how to do that to keep the children as safe as possible. And finally, I've said that a few times now, but finally, we have a private Facebook group where we're always putting value in there. Monday, I spoke to Sean Kitson from Sport England, and we talked about PE in the home and what parents can do to get their children active. But a lot of what was said is relevant to schools' cross-curricular type activities using PE, as we said, brain breaks, but actually integrating it into math lessons. That's on our Facebook page and on YouTube, so you can watch that back. On Monday, I'm speaking to Sonia Gill, who's an expert in primary school education, helping schools go from good to outstanding. So she's joining me on Monday at around 5 o'clock. So every Monday until the end of term, I'm speaking to somebody, an expert in their field in primary education in some form or another. So that's in our Facebook group. Just search Inspired Schools and it will come up. And obviously you can follow our Facebook page as well, but that Facebook group is for sort of PE coordinators, teachers and head teachers mainly. We do have a few coaches in there as well that want to learn about how best to provide provision for their schools. And that is it from me, I think. Marcus, do you want to add anything?
No, only a massive thank you for joining us. Really, it's a breath of fresh air that we've had so many people join us. And it's in these trying times. It's brilliant that there's so many people that on their agenda is that kind of raising activity levels and maintaining activity levels for children. So a huge thank you, and it's a breath of fresh air to us to get this many people listening.
Yeah, absolutely. Any comments, any feedback, feel free to let us know. This is quite new to us. This is like the third one we've done, but we'd love to hear your feedback and try and improve what we're doing and the offer and the value that we're giving to schools. But other than that, we'll hopefully see you next week. The link will be on our website. We'll put it on Facebook as well again, which most of you have seen. And hopefully we'll see you this time next week. Thanks again, and take care. Bye-bye.
Got a couple of questions there, Ben, that we can probably answer now. Yeah.
Lost everything. Questions. Can you see the questions?
I can, yeah.
There we go. Got it. Okay, so I think this is the first one. So, Ollie, do you have any advice for children to referee their own games that are different from using sports leaders or adults? At our school, activities such as football is banned because it causes too many arguments. When you have any thoughts on that? Yeah, I do have some thoughts on that, Ollie. I think it's a real shame when schools ban football. But equally, I can understand why it does get banned, because it does cause a lot of issues, injuries, arguments, sometimes fights in extreme cases. I think it's a shame though, because if football didn't exist or wasn't allowed, in primary schools when I was growing up, I don't know what I would have done. So for me, I think there has to be a way around it. And the best way that I've seen it work is sort of, as you said, leaders, if you've got strong leaders, then yes, but it might be that you have a lunchtime supervisor that goes on some additional training, like a sports sports activator training or something like that, where they are proactively involved with that football zoning as well. So it might be that you schedule who can play football on which days. Otherwise, you get the same children. Again, it would have been me when I was growing up, but you get the same children that are playing football and kind of dominating the game, and then that's when problems can arise. So we've got an alternative game as well called Foursquare. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's part of the Inspired Playgrounds package. It's essentially 4 squares with one child in each square. It's like a volleyball game, hitting the ball into other children's games. So the school that was on the video, they've got a 4-square. They've also got a zone where football goes on. And then that kind of works. You start to zone, like football's over here. We've got a dance area over here. We've got 4-square that's going on over here. But I do think in cases where you might have some challenging children, a lunchtime supervisor or teaching assistant or somebody that is strong enough to support the sports leaders, yes, by all means get the sports leaders refereeing, but they might need some additional support in that case. I don't know if you want to add anything to that, Marcus.
No, I would echo that really. We work in some schools where football is kind of no longer at lunchtime, and we work in schools that still kind of have a football provision. You know, I've definitely been kind of in school when I've seen children become upset, and it is an enabler for children getting competitive. Part of me thinks that is part of life, and you know, that resolution process and children kind of taking ownership of their feelings. You know, we've used a kind of a traffic light system before, so that, you know, if an individual feels like they're green, then, you know, absolutely carry on joining the game. If they feel like they're an amber, then, you know, they can go and just have a quiet time for a minute or two in a particular area of the playground before being reintegrated back into the game. And if they're a red, kind of the opportunity there is for them to go and get involved in a different activity. So kind of making aware of children that are taking part in the football activities, prior to that, kind of putting in some type of system so that they can kind of start managing their own feelings. Because ultimately those kind of really competitive children get a massive amount out of football sometimes as well. For some children in your school, that's probably their one passion or the one thing they're interested in life. So to enable them and to have football, I think is a real good thing for them. It enables them to kind of showcase their talent, where at school, sometimes they're overlooked or do struggle. So, some type of traffic light system whereby they can kind of take ownership of their emotions and feelings whilst the game's being played. And it may well be that, I've kind of put that system in place before that a child has kind of taken themselves away from the game 4 or 5 times. But always when they go back to a green where they feel they can get back involved in the game, then they can get back involved in the game as well. So giving ownership of the game and their feelings to those particular children, really.
Thank you for the question. I just seen your comment now, so hopefully that's answered that. Sorry, anonymous attendee, I don't know what your name is, but we missed your question at the start, so apologies. Is the 30 minutes daily physical activity required? And more AFP saying, AFP did a webinar. I didn't actually attend the webinar, and you have to be a member to watch them back. But there was a lot of comments afterwards about averaging it out. So the official guidance on the government website is still 30 minutes physical activity per day is a requirement. And I know I use the term target because it is a target for a lot of schools, and a lot of schools do struggle to hit it. So hopefully that answers your question, that yes, 30 minutes is still the requirement, and I hope it remains the case that, and PE, if we do get an hour on those 2 days during the week, that just is additional. And then it's great that they get 60 minutes on those 2 days, and on the other 3 days they get 30 minutes. So I hope that answers your question. I hope I haven't confused things by saying AFP have suggested that they mentioned averaging it out, but I don't like that personally. Mandy, do you issue certificates? I'm not sure what you mean by that, like a CPD type certificate. I guess that's what you mean. If that is the case, then no, unfortunately we don't. We're not accredited in that term as a CPD provider. Possibly one day in the future we will be, hopefully. We are looking into delivering teacher training on physical activity, much like Aspire Sport do, but down in the southwest for our coaches and teachers that we work with. I don't know if you're still on, Mandy, but hopefully that answers your question. Do you think that's what she means, Marcus?
I think so. Some type of accreditation or certificate for attending the webinars.
She might not be on still, but unfortunately we don't. But hopefully you've enjoyed it all the same. Okay, just read the comments. Karima, thank you both. Enjoyable and thought-provoking. Enjoy the rest of your evenings. Thank you very much. It's really nice to hear. All right, okay, we're gonna wrap it up unless Mandy comments again. Unless anybody's got any further questions. You're smiling, Marcus. Have you seen something?
No, absolutely not. No, we're all good to go.
Okay, great. Well, as I said, take care, everybody. I hope that we've given you some ideas, provided a bit of value, and we hope to see you next week on the social distancing in PE, which I'm sure will be very thought-provoking. But take care, and we'll see you next week. Thanks very much. Bye-bye.